Testing. One, two. There we go. All right.
Conklin, everybody.
You know, as an illustration of the process of some of what I want to talk about, this whole thing of the problem of communication, period, is, and it's not just the only problem. Thanks, yeah. So it is the process of coordinating with Rhoda about being here.
Yes.
And it's really very illustrative. You know, you really have to do more than just throw these things on. Yeah, that's okay. So anyway, I found out approximately just before lunch that I was giving a talk today. I knew I was on the panel. I just didn't know that meant you give a presentation. So, this is driving me batty.
Okay.
So my whole time's going to be up. And yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, we'll just turn it into a magic wand. How's that? Like that?
No, how about this?
That one's turning crappy though.
Oh, all right.
Okay. You guys in the back, if you hear this going bad, please, and then we'll switch over.
Yeah, and I'll speak into it.
Yeah,
It's gone bad?
Yeah. Oh, it is going. Just hold this.
All right.
And then put this in your pocket.
Okay.
So, yeah, just put that back in your. We have a break after this session, so then we'll be doing battery work.
Okay, so any questions?
Is technology getting better?
Okay, nothing grandiose about this, but I've spent the last couple of decades kind of haplessly chiseling away because I had two people who inspired me in the early days, and one was Doug Engelbart, and the whole idea of augmentation and hypertext was just like, oh my gosh, oh no, oh my God, and the other was a guy named Horst Riddle who taught design at UC Berkeley and in Stuttgart. And Riddle had this idea, they both had this idea that humanity was headed for big problems, and we were going to get way smarter really fast. And Riddle's contribution, I think one of the biggest contributions, although it hasn't been recognized until recently when Hillary Clinton started using the term all the time, was the idea of wicked problems. So, okay, now we're talk really fast, okay? All right, so this is really background. So you don't even have to pay attention to this part, especially if you don't like it. But I've convinced myself that we're in a pre-apocalyptic phase of evolution. That the old limits of growth, the J curve, bad things are going to happen real soon. I think we're already seeing signs of that. I think all you have to do is look at the Republican Party, and it's really obvious. So a lot of that, one of the things that I've determined in my deep research is that the problem is our addiction to problem solving. Because problem solving is a mindset in which you define a problem, which is relatively static. You define who your experts are going to be, and then you march down a linear curve from problem to solution, and voila, here's the solution, and it's the right answer, and I'll send you my invoice. And it turns out the wicked problems are caused because of all the problem solving that's going on. It's just one crappy, short-term, fix-it, Band-Aid on another till you've got whatever the original thing was, and then this amalgam of layer of gooey, gummy fix-its including regulatory stuff, of course, obviously, and all kinds of other things. So we've got this thing that we just have to give up on. And there, it's done. Should I just wiggle my mouse every now and then? Oh, that's my, okay. Concentration of power and money, I'm all about that because I was on this fabulous project called the Delta Dialogues. I spent 2 years working with a group that came together once a month, and they represented, for the first time in 100 years, represented all of the stakeholder groups involved in figuring out what to do with the water that's flowing out of the Sierras into the Delta before it goes to the rest of California, which is like the poster child for wicked problems. And after 2 years, the group was really gelling, really had a lot of trust for each other. People who had never spoken to each other except in courtrooms during litigation started laughing and making jokes with each other and giving each other, gag gifts and stuff. Fabulous. And the money ran out. And the money, when I say the money ran out, let me just say it was a little suspicious because the money happened to run out just as the group had gelled to the point where they had come up with a draft letter to the governor about the problems with his $28 to $50 billion twin tunnel project, which was a key part of BDCP. We don't have water up here, do we?
No, we can get some.
Oh, would you? Thank you. So the money ran out. That's so strange. What a coincidence. It's happened to me twice now. Just as a big project was getting close to coming up with something that didn't fit the authorizing environment's preset agenda, no more money for dialogue, sorry. So, no, and I'm not cynical or angry or anything about any of that. Another thing that's really always been fascinating to me, how many people have heard of this idea? In fact, I think, I'm sorry, who's the previous speaker? Somebody was just talking about schemas. It was schema, sorry. Schema, yeah. So this whole idea of incommensurability of meaning is this idea in the philosophy of language. And it basically says that it's sort of theoretically impossible that two people could ever mean the same thing by anything, right? Meaning is always completely personal because the genetics that led to the different people is different, and the experiences that led to the different people's lives is different. So what is the chance that the word red is going to mean the same thing to two different people? How about justice? How about terrorist? It's diminishingly small. And yet, oh God, I can't remember the guy's name. Okay, so this is the quiz. Who said the hardest thing in communication is the illusion that it has taken place? Yes, Oscar Wilde, I believe so. Very good. So, when you start looking at the great thing about conversations, face-to-face conversations, is if there's a communication breakdown, if I say something and the other person goes, I get a clue. I can detect a breakdown in communication, and I can immediately move to fix it. If somebody writes something that I think is either, okay, good. You could just wiggle the mouse for me. All right, you get the idea. The problem here is that face-to-face, we detect and repair communication breakdowns like this all the time. That's what the human brain does really well. That's essential to our, at least the powerful illusion that we're communicating. In text, If you're communicating by text, I mean, Frodis and my emails back and forth would be a beautiful case study in failure to communicate. Totally undetected. And then, speaking as somebody who has no background to talk about such things, I'm also convinced that one of our biggest challenges is the limits of cognition. We've got this eensy-weensy working memory, which stuff falls out of all the time. And our brains are basically wired for narrative, for sequence. And so you take something that's a complex analysis of something, and the average person cannot possibly be bothered with it. It's way too hard to get through. But if you tell me a story about it, I might stick around. Okay, so the term "the problem" there is kind of a joke because of my whole thing about problems and solutions and problem solving. Sorry, you can tell. I can do a lot of things, but not two at once.
Okay, you only have 2 minutes.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so the elements of a post-fossil governance approach is augmented, multi-stakeholder, participant-driven dialogue. Now, any questions? So let me show you something really cool. Basically, the key word here is dialogue. And the possibility is that you do the kinds of things that Doug was talking about. Hi. Oh, one. Okay. The possibility of augmenting that communication process in a way that when people miscommunicate, there's some help for that. When there's a huge amount of information that nobody can keep in their heads and they're learning like from a fire hose, there's some way of dealing with that. A lot of the things that people have already been talking about today. But it's got to be live. It's got to be, what did you call it, fast? You had 2 bullets, fast to create and fast to read.
So you can have flow.
So you can have flow, exactly. Okay, so that's the answer. God knows what it looks like, but we have to get it, we need to build it like really fast, okay? And then, this is a picture of an IBIS issue map. Oh no, this is the blog for the Delta Dialogues project. And then for every blog, there was a map. This is a open source software for creating issue maps that are basically questions, possible answers, and occasionally pros and cons. And this map was constructed live, on the fly, on a screen, in front of the participants as they discussed this issue. So there's nothing scripted or planned or structured about the conversation. It's to our disadvantage at times. It would have been better to say, here's what you got to talk about, but instead we let them run the show and pick the topics that they thought were important. And as a result, sometimes it's very difficult to figure out what on earth. Somebody was speaking, but you didn't know what question they were answering.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, you don't get to go anywhere else. I'm going to ask a very leading question to start off with. How does this work? Basically, you have another minute to continue.
Well, someone introduces the topic for the next little bit of conversation is going to be, we're going to look at this thing called the, there's the California Water Action Plan. So these are links to objects. Creating this map is very fast. It's keystroke. Keystroke to get a question, type in the stuff, keystroke to get an idea node, link it in. So somebody with any typing skills can, it's a kind of a word processor that breaks the individual chunks of thought into their own icons, a kind of a concatenation of ideas.
Jane?
Jeff, is there any means to make this publicly available so that it can, in the state of California, that it can pressure legislators and other interest groups so that the public sees some of these elements? Because this is fantastic in terms of making clear cut what all the problems are and moving parts. But if it were more transparent to say Sacramento, some traction on this?
Or that you would attract attention faster and get your funding cut faster. This is on the web. It's been on the web since a few days after this meeting occurred. So this whole every map there, every map node represents a portion of the meeting, and it's all broken down. So we were just inside that map, which has 51 nodes in it, and that map view is embedded in 2 different views. So this is all basic. It's a very like 3-dimensional, fast hypertext system for Riddle's IBIS approach: questions, ideas, pros, and cons. And it's incredible. But so the use of it, however, it really is a power tool to Doug's idea of.
Back to one of your other questions.
Yeah.
Is this simple enough that people, so, we talked about complexity problem and
Yeah.
diminishing the small working number of people have. Is this simple enough that there are 1 or 2 salient points that can maybe humiliate the people who pull the plug on this? To make it publicly available?
It's in there, but in the course of this, halfway through the second year, the process we were using allowed you to observe that there were criteria that were important to people, everybody, that weren't applied to BDCP.
Oh, we've lost power on that too.
Just time's up, huh?
Okay, yeah. You have a very quick question.
A quick response here. I was somewhat involved in the Delta Dialogues project also, peripherally compared to Jeff. But I think they did a pretty good job of presenting the work that they did. What didn't really happen, from my perspective, is that really the news media didn't catch on that something important was happening. Where it's like it's one job to just put a bunch of stuff up there, but it's a different job for someone a little independent of it to say, this stuff is interesting. And it just didn't happen.
Maybe about here in California, it's called solutions journalism. And I would want to lead them to you and to the Delta Project and other things like that.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yep.